Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Discovery, Season 1, Episode 3. It is called Context is for Kings. Full spoilers for the episode, as always.
It's a good title.
It's a pretty good title. Obviously, the sentence itself comes up in the episode, which doesn't always happen, but it can be a nice moment when it does. This, obviously, we talked about last week how that felt like a prologue. The double pilot felt like a prologue before the show started proper. And I think having watched episode 3, I stick by that
Yeah,
statement.
definitely. It really felt like, okay, this is the start now.
Yeah, this is what the context of the show is. This context is for kings. We must be kings. But no, this is what the context of the show is now going forward. This definitely slowed down a lot compared to that first double episode, which I'm glad for because I do think that pace would have been unsustainable. Like if they'd kept
Yeah,
going that
it was
fast.
fine as like oh, this is your big opener.
Yeah,
But you can't do that the whole season.
yeah, it needed to slow down, and this episode was a kind of an interesting mix of things. It felt like a mix between a traditional Star Trek or sci-fi episode where we need to search the derelict ship, right? That's kind of, I mean, that's not the whole episode, but the big chunk of it. Once things get going, that's what it is, and it was that mixed with a bit of the Expanse. There's something in here that reminds me a little bit of the Proto Molecule when it was popping up.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Yeah.
But then you also did have it felt like almost a bit of a second pilot because okay, here's the crew, here's all the people that we're going to know over
But
this season.
that's the thing, though. I do like that I already knew like two of them, and then we had like two or three new characters. I like that.
It
We,
offset it a bit. It
yeah,
wasn't too much of a big exposition dump at once.
yeah. I felt like I just got to like. You've got the head of security, and she's kind of just like this loyal head of security right now. She's got a bit of an attitude. She kind of like she makes a comment about them being filth or something like that when she brings the prisoners in, and you've got the science guy who's doing all the experiments and stuff. Stamets, his character, and you get him, but he's very much tied to the plot. In terms of the character introductions that I felt were really important, not that those two aren't important. I'm sure they'll get more time as they go. It was obviously the captain, Captain Lorca, played by
Yeah.
Jason Isaacs. He, of course, he has an intrigue about him. We're kind of learning what kind of character he is, because the fact that he even wants Michael around is questionable. Why does he want Michael around? And we can talk about that. And then the other character, of course, the roommate, Sylvia Tilly, who, honestly, obviously she's a very timid character. She's very nervous, wants to make friends. She's definitely not your typical Trek character. She's a more down-to-earth kind of dweeb, if you will. My cat's attacking me.
Yeah, very much so. When she comes in and just starts talking and talking and talking, you're like, okay, I get who she is already.
Oh, Michael's a strange name for a girl. The only other girl that I know named Michael is that mutineer that just started the whole Klingon war. You're not her, are you? Are you? Like, that's the character in a
Yeah.
nutshell. That tells you everything you need to know about her, at least right now. The other big thing that I actually thought I had thinking about her throughout the rest of the episode is towards the end of the episode when Michael comes back to the room, she's got her hair out, and I went, holy shit, she's got a lot of hair that I did not expect.
Yeah, me too, because it didn't seem like that much before.
No, because she has it all tied in. Like it's almost she's almost breaking the laws of physics herself by tying all that hair into that. Because it looked like she had almost short hair, just a little tight bun kind of thing.
It did. It was impressive. I'm not gonna lie. Once I realised it was all that.
And then she walks in the room and she's there. It's like an explosion. Literally, she's ginger. It's this big bright orange explosion on her head.
There is no other way of describing it.
I mean,
It's
if you've got like a little grenade on top of your head, she's got an atom bomb.
pretty severe. Everything's more impressive in the future.
And hey, ginger's a recessive gene. This should be died out by now.
Yeah. It's quite possible that
I know we
would
brought up some logic, science logic last week that didn't quite add up, but this is a much bigger crime than anything else.
happen. Yes, that offends your soul though, doesn't it?
But she seems like a fine character though. I like that she's kind of, at first she's kind of standoffish with Michael. She lies about, when Michael's given the position in the lab to do some number crunching, she's like, oh no, the stations are mandatory, like we don't pick them. And then we find out like 2 seconds later that we do pick them. And I think this is what this episode excelled at, that episodes 1 and 2 did not excel at, is that it did, because it slowed down, it gave us actual character moments where I got a feeling of the not tension, but I mean it is kind of tension, but just the mood in the room as like
Yeah.
Michael realizes she was just lied to, and that slow walk back to the station, looking at her, it just
Yeah.
being like,
And I want to just go slightly off topic there, but at that point, then you have a gorgeous transition for a time lapse.
Yeah, you do, yeah. Okay, before we get to the actual plot, because obviously we're going to dig into it a bit more proper here. We've talked about the characters a little bit. I do want to point out, did you notice the skeleton in the sort of the lab at the end that when the captain was in?
No.
Gorn skeleton in a case.
Okay.
I cheered. I made a little cheer, little Gorn Easter egg in the background.
It's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. So the episode kind of breaks into two halves. Essentially, you've got the last half, which is going on the ship, but the first half is when we arrive at Discovery. We have this scene with these other convicts being transported, and there's this, I can't remember what they call it, but it's like an energy feeding bacteria or something like that starts to feed out off the engine. And we actually see the pilot, because it's just a little shuttle, so it's just one pilot and the prisoners, there's no one else on it. She goes to try and fix it, and we see her like shoot past the window a couple of seconds later. I was like, okay, that's a bit darker than usual for Trek. I'm not used to this kind of tone.
And then they're all like, yeah, okay, we're gonna die. They're all panicking.
Yeah. Except Michael,
who's just sitting there.
Which I think's important. I think it shows that she's kind of okay. If this was going to be her end, she's like,
she's accepted it.
She's kind of she's. I don't think she's suicidal by any stretch, but I don't think that she's going to fight for life either at this point.
She's not going to fight for it. She's like, okay, if this is what it is, then she feels she deserves it.
Because throughout the episode, every time someone kind of offers her a job or a chance to do something, she's like, I just want to serve out my sentence. She has that guilt.
Yeah.
And we talked about that from the teaser last week, how she corrects the number. Like, oh, you killed 8,000 people on the first day, and she's like 8,227 or whatever the number was.
Yeah.
She knows the exact figure. There's a small reference to Spock in this episode. Actually, I don't know if you.
There was, yeah.
I trained with with Sarek's son. Was the
yeah, and she also mentions Spock's mother. Reading of the story. She says she read it to her son and her.
Which reminds me, I did actually laugh quite a bit when she pulled out the book and Tilly just goes, "Is that a book?"
She got so excited.
It's a simple little thing, but it makes a lot of sense. Which, speaking of, I like that I'll call them the USB drives, are basically the same as the original series. They're a bit more fancy looking because they've got like a sort of transparent effect to them. But it's the same little square disc things.
Yeah, proto floppy disks.
Proto-floppy disks.
God.
Sure.
I mean, it seems ancient now, but it was still like way ahead of its time for that.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if they based that on like because obviously computers were kind of I mean, they took up a whole room, and like NASA was like the one place that had one outside of the people making them. But I wonder if they did research at the time in the '60s and like, okay, is there? But even back then, though, it was all tape and stuff. It was all the big tape machines.
It wouldn't have been floppies.
So, but I wonder if, I don't know, like if they researched and said, oh, do you know where it's going? And maybe they had like an idea that they were going to have these disc ideas.
I prefer the idea that they just went, screw it, it's going to look like this. And then when it came to, when the technology kind of caught up, people were like, no, that's what was in their head because they'd seen it on Star Trek. So they kind of subconsciously kind of copied that. Fair.
And it's kind of funny now that we're way past that point where it doesn't even resemble that anymore. It used to. When we first got there, it did.
Exactly.
But now we're way and beyond. But yeah, so they get pulled in. Discovery pulls them in, and they point out immediately it's a new ship. It's a brand new spanking ship, straight off the assembly, and why is it doing out here? And I think what I really liked about this episode is that it built some mystery as to what is the ship for, what is its purpose, because they keep teasing it all episode, and obviously we get a bit of an answer at the end. Isaacs kind of gives us a sort of revelation as to what's actually going on, but for a lot of the episode it's very much, no, what is this? It's a science vessel, but there's a lot of, as they put it, black badges, which are like sort of military higher ups.
Yeah, and Sarah mentions that they can have like 300 separate science projects.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, so this is kind of off the books stuff.
Yeah, and they call them silver badges, which mean science officers. Yeah. Obviously, gold is the command and that kind of side of things. But so right away they're building this thing, and I really, again, talking about how they had smaller character moments again to let me actually take in, because I think that was my biggest criticism in the first one, is that I never really felt like Michael got a chance to stop and breathe and actually let me see her react in a human way to what's happened. But in this, we had moments with the roommate where she kind of like, it's okay, like, you don't have to apologise, I understand. Or Saru specifically, though, there was a couple of sweet moments with him where he has kind of attached, and like she brings up, I got to hear the speech you made at the captain's funeral. And you know, there was these little beats and moments where it was like, okay, I'm starting to understand her mindset a little bit more. I get her as a character more.
It's like, you know, at the end of that conversation, Sarah's like, hey, I plan on keeping my captain alive, unlike you. And she just kind of walks off. She's just like, okay. She just has to kind of get reminded of that guilt and sit with it.
Yeah, she has to take that sentence. She can't defend it. She
can't argue, and she knows that. So she just has to kind of swallow it.
Yeah, and it does give this show a very different tone from any other Trek that I've seen. It is a very much more expansive Battlestar Galactica, darkness, like we could all be screwed, but it ties into the captain as well, because as we learn about him, is he's been given authority to do what he needs to do to win the war, but you see that he has. I mean, that's where the title of the episode comes from. Is that he wants, at the end of the episode, after she's went through the plot, and we'll talk about that, but he wants her because she thinks outside the box. She doesn't just follow what the directives are. As he puts it, the big grand rules are for the lackeys, but the context is for the kings. But that's the point, is that she reacted in context the way that at least he would agree that it should have been different from regular, even though what she did kind of result in you know, things going bad. But basically her thinking against what she's supposed to is what he thinks it'll take to win this war.
And he might be right.
He may be right. Do you know what it reminds me of, actually, in a weird way? Now, I know people, this is going to be a weird reference to make, but Demolition Man. Oh,
thank God. I thought you were going to go for something else then.
What did you think I was going to go for?
No. I'm not going to say. Just I know you, and anytime you can get a reference, you will get a reference. I was like, how are you fitting it in here?
No, it's not a reference to the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. What it is, though, so Demolition Man, it's a movie. It's a dumb sci-fi movie with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, and the whole idea in that movie is that kind of Star Trek in a sense that in the future crime has become a thing of the past. There's no more crime. Cops are basically just kind of mild peacekeepers. There's no dangerous criminals, but Wesley Snipes, because everyone who was in prison at the time from like 20, 30 years ago was put in cryosleep. That was like, instead of going to a jail cell, they went into cryosleep. And Wesley Snipes, who's a villain, breaks out, and the cops have no idea how to deal with them. They don't know how to deal with a dangerous criminal who like goes to the museum to find guns, which is the only place they can find a gun, because guns are just not a thing anymore. They don't need them. So they have to wake up Sylvester Stallone, who was a badass cop from, at the time, the distant past of the 90s. Well, it's the distant past now, but I think Demolition Man was maybe 40 years in the future at the time. I can't remember. But so they have to wake up
far off then.
Yeah. So they have to wake up the badass, like the badass cop who knows how to deal with this, who, you know, who breaks the rules, and it was actually something I was thinking about not that long ago. Is like, just when I was watching the original series, is, you know, what if they do need someone who thinks like the olden days to win a fight, because they just can't, like their ways of peacetime just can't take on an enemy that's, you know, like some threat. And it made me kind of think of that in this episode, where I'm like, that's kind of what he's saying to her. He's kind of saying, Michael, you think not like everyone else who's in Starfleet. You think like, you know, someone who actually, you know, broke boundaries and would think outside the box, and because that, you might actually succeed in something greater. Like, you know, everyone who reaches those points did kind of, you know, break the rules a little bit, or did something new.
Yeah, they did what they had to in the moment. Again, it all comes down to context. Is this appropriate for that moment? And arguably, a lot of what she did there was a point where it was like, okay, this wasn't.
Yeah, the final thing where she killed the Klingon out of the moment of passion. Which, by the way, her phaser before that was set to stun. I never thought of this last week, but she was just stunning the others. When they were shooting all the other Klingons, it was all stun.
She chose to change it.
She chose to change it in a moment of passion because she cared about her captain. It was a moment of vengeance. And so I like that, even though she was arguably right about a lot of things, that final moment was absolutely a mistake. It was absolutely, no, she did something wrong there. Against her own word. Which makes all the guilt, you know,
because she'll
palatable.
know that.
Yeah.
She'll be like, why did I have to do that? If I could have, you know, stayed calm and stayed on mission.
Yeah, her vengeance was not worth the war that's now going on.
Right.
For 6 months. That's what the time jump was. I thought it'd be longer, actually. I thought it'd be a couple of years, but whatever, 6 months.
I think 6 months works though, because it just shows you just how bloody this war is. If it's like, okay, there's this much in 6 months.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's already this bad. Yeah, that makes sense. Uh, so and obviously, just to go back to the character stuff, Saru, because we know he senses death, and he's kind of, I don't want to call him a coward. He's just, his race is just naturally scared of things. That's kind of what he does. He sees death coming, and he says that she's dangerous. Like, you're a good officer, you're the best, but you are dangerous. Which actually was my other big laugh of the episode. There's a few funny moments in this one actually. When it's when the captain tells him that, okay, this sister ship, who was also doing all the same experiments, they had two ships. That for some reason everyone in the crew's dead. We have to go and investigate. And he comes in, and it's the science guy who's doing all the research. Stamets. He's upset because his best friend. We had one sort of phone call conversation with him and his friend. If I'm going to make a criticism about this episode, is I do think that felt kind of rushed, where it was just kind of like, oh, we heard one phone call now. Oh, that was his best friend on this other ship.
Yeah, yeah, and then it was, oh, things might go wrong. Be careful. And then, very next scene, Captain coming in, something's gone wrong.
Yeah, that felt a little bit rushed, especially when he's like, oh, I know you just lost a friend, but don't act out of line, like, this is an order. And I'm like, oh, that was his friend on the phone, okay. I didn't really get that until he made a point of saying it.
Yeah, okay.
So it was just a little bit clunky in that sense, a little bit rushed, but I mean, it's not a big complaint. But no, the other moment I laughed is he's like, take Michael with you, and you're like, what? The traitor? What? And he's like, nah, she's useful. She's got all these skills. She can do it. Saru, you work with her on the Shenzhou. What would you say her abilities are? And he says, oh, without a doubt, she's the smartest officer I've ever met. And then Isaac just looks over at Stamets and goes, and he's met you.
Yeah,
That was a funny line.
It's a real dig, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it.
Do you know, something that occurred to me is while I was watching it, last week we said this felt a lot like Mass Effect.
Yeah.
And there's that thing in BioWare RPGs where they, obviously because you can create your own name, they always refer to someone by their title, whatever that is in that game. And this kind of felt like that to me, because they're always calling it the Mutineer.
Yeah. Or last name, which also works because in Mass Effect you can't pick your last name. Yeah. You're always Shepard, so they can just say Shepard and it works.
Yeah.
And they do that a lot. They call her Burnham a lot, but I just remember Michael. I think this is Michael because it is a guy's name. It's just it stands out a little bit more.
It is. It's a bit. It's smart in a way that it makes it really memorable, because they even have a point here. It's like, okay, it's not really common still, because obviously we have that discussion with the roommate.
Yeah. It's not super common. Yeah. But no. So I think by the end of this episode, we've got this kind of friend now, the roommate, who does seem to kind of like her and wants to give her a chance. We have a captain who respects her ability and wants her to, be a part of this and help. And Saru has a mixed relationship with her because he respects her a lot, but obviously he was there on the ship when she did what she did. So I think already we have a nice sort of 5-6 characters with interesting dynamics. I mean, obviously security officers may be lower on the list in the sense that we don't really know much about her yet, but even from the small amount we got of her, I kind of got a bit of personality. I got a little bit of who she is.
Yeah, no, I'm really interested in the captain. I thought it was fascinating. Not in ways I was expecting either.
Yeah, it feels like he could go off book in ways he's not meant to at some point.
Yeah, I feel like at some point he's gonna go, ends justify the means sort of thing.
It kind of feels like that. It feels like he's willing to make an absolute villain out of himself to end this war. He's kind of old school. I
guarantee, he has that kind of condition with his eyes where he has to have the light adjust slowly. I guarantee at some point this season it'll be used against him, and it might even be Michael that does it because she has to, go stop him for something, and they'll just, like a big flash grenade or something.
Actually, do you know what it'll be? It won't be like a big moment of a fight or anything like that. It'll be she wants to sneak something out of his room, so she'll turn the light on suddenly and go, "Oh shit, sorry, I didn't mean that," and then she'll swipe whatever it was she wanted to get.
It's definitely being used against him though.
It'll be that small moment, but no. No, I like Isaac's in this. So they go over to this ship. They go over to was it the Glen? I think it was called.
The Glen, yeah.
Yeah. And we got our, they're wandering through creepy corridors, and again, very, very expansive. I was getting a lot of even because at one point one of the characters even said shit. I mean, when was the last time you heard a character in Star Trek say shit?
It really turned up the horror though, with all these mutilated bodies, these scratch marks,
mutilated Klingons as well. In fact, I loved that moment when the one Klingon who's alive steps out, and you think, oh, is he the one who's hunting them? And he's just And then the security officer's like, is he shushing you?
And then bang, Klingon goes flying back.
Yeah, it was just a pretty generic monster running around trying to kill them, but it made for some good moments. And we had obviously Michael's like, give me a phaser, and it's like, no, criminals don't get phasers. It's like, no, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to distract it while you guys get out. So she's earned a little bit of cred, I think, with just those core people because she was willing to do that. And I think even her herself was like, I'm the expendable one. I'll do this.
Yeah, and again, it's going back to that like guilt, where it's she deserves it. So if this is it, then she'll take it. If she survives, great, she'll carry on. But if not, oh well.
Yeah, she's like I say, it's not a death wish, but she's willing to die at any moment if that's what the occasion calls for. And she has all our Alice in Wonderland sort of references as she's crawling through the tunnels and stuff. And when she explains that book to her roommate, it's kind of like that's what taught me to sort of think differently, because Vulcans are so logical, and her and her mother were the only humans in the house, and them sharing this book, and like the idea that Alice in Wonderland is all about like, sometimes up is down and left is right, and like things aren't what they seem. Like it's not always just a straight case of right and wrong. And
it kind of just plays into the whole idea of her thinking outside the box, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I had good fun with all of the chasing around on the ship in the dark and the monster and stuff. It was kind of like I say, that was the part that felt the most like a traditional old school sci-fi TV episode. But of course we have a bigger budget, everything's a bit more stylized. Now that said, obviously this was a much cheaper episode than the last two because it was mostly inside the ships.
Yeah.
And it wasn't abusing the Dutch angles as much, which I'm actually kind of happy about.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like bad cheap.
No.
It's cheaper because it's not doing all these crazy things, but it feels like this is what it needed to be.
Oh yeah. Like whenever it was like outside and we seen the ship, it still looked as big budget as it had been. I think it's just a case of them smartly going, okay, well, we're going to have like 4 big like action set pieces throughout the season, which are going to like wow people and be. So we have one in the first episodes, obviously, because it's the first one, and then.
Yeah, it's funny we keep mentioning Expanse because Expanse does the same thing where it looks great consistently. But it knows where these are the moments where it's going to do something special, and you typically get like maybe 4 per season.
And I think that's really that is not a criticism. Like that is smart. That is how they should do it. Because at the same time, if they could afford to do it every episode, it'd be like, well, this will get old. It won't feel special anymore because we're just seeing it constantly.
It's smart budgeting for one, because obviously, if you can make it look better and then still be good, why not?
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing as
pacing.
well. Yeah, for pacing, but also just the idea that, sometimes they say that constrictions actually improve filmmaking. Like sometimes you're told you can't have something, so you have to think outside the box. And we've said that phrase a lot this episode. I do apologise.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you have a limitation, you're forced to be creative to get around it.
Yeah, Jaws is the big example everyone uses, because Jaws is the movie where, this shark looks like shit, we're going to have to just not show it. And that basically informed what the feeling of that movie is, because you hardly ever see the shark. It's all about what you don't see.
Yeah.
And that's good. Where, sometimes if you can do anything, sometimes you end up with a bit of a bloated kind of mess because you weren't forced to restrict anything in a little bit.
Yeah, it's because you just go with your first thoughts. You don't have to really think about it, and actually put real hard effort into what needs to be there, what needs to be cut, what can you do to fix things.
Yeah. So no, but of course the big thing we've not talked about yet is what the ship's actually doing, because obviously Michael's offered this role. I want you to be on my ship, and she refuses. Partly because she thinks she wants to do her sentence, but partly because, look, because she actually sneaks out at one point. She steals some of her roommate's breath to go and sneak into like one of the lab areas that's growing all this.
It's growing stuff was the point.
Yeah, this bright like. Almost bioluminescent stuff that was sort of going around. But she's like, I think you're making a biological weapon. And she's like, that's against the Geneva Convention of. And I like how she added on a second date. It was like 2154 was the second one. It was like they re-upped the convention. It's like we're doubling down on this because it
was a nice touch.
But she's like, I think you're doing something really bad here. And as much as I did what I did, I still live to Starfleet and the Federation's rules. That's still who I am. That's who I'll die. And he takes her down to the lab area again and puts her in this sort of containment area and pumps it full of this stuff, this bright stuff, and basically explains they're trying to develop a quicker way to travel at insane speeds. Now they have warp speeds already, but I mean, because as soon as he started talking about this, and because this is a prequel, I'm like, okay, what's he talking about here? Is this something we've already seen? Like, in in the old shows, like at least in the original series where we've got to so far, I think the fastest I've went is like warp 7.
Yeah, I don't think this is any of those.
Right. Okay.
Because this seems different, doesn't it?
So you think this is something that once it's used to win the war, it'll be like outlawed or something, and they won't use it again?
Either outlawed or maybe the technology never makes it off this ship. Like the ship's destroyed and they can't recreate it. Something like that.
Yeah, maybe I could see that. Because it basically does this thing where it kind of like almost it's not transports her, but these like molecules, they kind of like take in wherever they've been, so you can actually view them like a memory, and it like shows her like seeing around her like this different moon, and then this planet, and then this this jungle area, and it was like all these different places. So they want to harness this to travel faster than they've ever been able to win the war. So
yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's more interesting than it just being a weapon.
Yeah,
because it has the traditional Trek stuff of multiple applications. We can have the debate about how should this be used? What can it be for outside of wartime?
I'm really curious as to if this ends up being something that is in Trek later on that we already know about. Like like maybe it forms the basis of something.
Yeah. Yeah, could be.
I mean, I don't know if they've mentioned it in this show yet, but we always talk about the dilithium crystals that power the
They
ships.
did actually, because the mine in this episode, the mine they were coming from was a dilithium mine.
Oh, was it? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm not those, but I'm just thinking something like that where it's like, oh, we actually do kind of know that from future. Maybe it has like a new name or something like that, or I don't know. But I'm curious.
Me too.
But no, so the it ends with a sort of, again, showing that the captain has a bit of a darker edge to him. Like, he's left in that lab at the end with the Gorn skeleton in the case, and it's this, dark lab. And even though everything he said to Michael's probably true, it kind of feels like, is there something else going on here? There seems like something's not being told. There's another part of this that she doesn't know about. It almost feels like he's told her a good bit of truth, so she'll stop looking for anything more.
Yeah, it could be.
I was kind of getting that vibe off of him.
Alternatively, it's more just, no, that was the truth. It's just he's going to go further than people realize. We keep seeing how he's really committed to winning this war. That's his prime directive right now, is to end the war. Because
they blow up the Glen, and you kind of assume, oh, they've killed that monster then because it was on there. And then he beamed it across first. They've got it. He's got it in a cage.
This is a weapon he can use. He can unleash this on the Klingons. He can beam this across to their ship, as far as he's concerned.
Yeah, if I'm going to guess right now, I'd say that he's going to go to a dark place, and Michael's going to ironically have to be the one who stands up and says, "You're going too far," and I think so. I think she's going to have to mutiny again, but for the right reasons this time.
I think so.
But maybe this time she'll actually get the support of the crew. Like maybe the crew will witness it and say, maybe they'll stand behind her because of like what he's doing.
And this will play into her bringing up the Geneva Conventions, the sole idea that it's like she's still she abides by that, even if these Klingons, they're enemies, they're alien, they're monsters, but still there's rules of engagement. You can't just do that.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that this episode did not have lots of talking Klingon scenes, because that was definitely the biggest part of the first two for me.
Yeah.
And there was none of that. In fact, the one Klingon moment we had was a really good little Klingon moment. So more of that, please.
Definitely.
Less is more sometimes, I think, is the key.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed this episode.
I enjoyed that a lot. I still like. I mean, obviously, it's a weird thing to compare when we've had like 2 seasons of The Expanse to compare it to, but it's just the obvious thing to compare it to. I still don't think the general quality is consistent or as strong as that yet.
No, I agree with that.
It just feels a little rough around the edges, but that could just be a case of finding footing. But I'm definitely on board.
No, I feel like it feels pretty similar to how Expanse did at the start. In those first few episodes where you're learning everything, it's like, okay, it's not perfect. There's real promise.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to compare those episodes specifically, I'd probably still give The Expanse the edge. But
yeah, maybe just, but it's a lot closer.
Yeah, it's just not a gulf. Whereas if I'm compared to the 2 seasons of Expanse, it's a gulf, because Expanse has done some amazing things and it's built on its characters and so on and so forth. I I guess my only final point is, because I think we brought this up as last week, and I think it's worth revisiting, is this a good Star Trek show? Like, I'm starting to think, oh, I'm going to enjoy this as a sci-fi show. I'm going to enjoy this as a sci-fi tense action show. But is it a good Star Trek show?
I think this episode made a better case for it. Like, I see how this can be. Okay, here's the ship, here's the crew, like that we're going to get to know, and these are the things that we're going to do. We're going to get into those moral dilemmas of Star Trek. You know, between, you know, okay, is this too far with the war? Like, I can see how this is going to get them. Arguably, it's pretty still maybe a bit too gritty and slick to ever be quite the Star Trek show you think it should be.
Oh, well, that's an opinion thing, but maybe not quite the Star Trek shows that you remember. I guess maybe the more accurate.
Right, maybe it'll really stick out amongst the rest. That's kind of always going to be there. But I think this episode made a much stronger case for it feeling like Star Trek than the first two.
Yeah, this could be what we really think of. Okay, Star Trek had to evolve. It can't just be the old thing anymore. It has to change a bit.
I will say, I still think it's odd where if I didn't know better, I would say this was part of the movie universe and not the TV universe. You know, with the Abrams movie. I
think that's just a visual style more than
it is, but
just
immediately you look at that and I feel like I look at it and I go, okay, this belongs with those, but I'm told it's not.
I think that'll be helped maybe by where we end up. Like if we get closer to that as a show, because maybe that's kind of the whole journey of the show, is that by the time we end it, theoretically, the ideals that we're familiar with the Enterprise and the original series will be kind of closer to that stage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I can see that being a thing. But yeah, so that has been episode 3 of Star Trek Discovery. So by all means, let us know what you think of the episode in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates if you want to do that. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv. You can do that over there. There's a bunch of bonuses and stuff. We should mention, actually, we have an audio feed for these reviews now. Up on the iTunes and your various podcast app services and whatnot. So you can find it there.
If you're interested in audio feeds in general, I would suggest just search for Mild Fuzz TV. And a variety of offerings will come up. Not everything, but some things are there, and it's easier than searching for something individual. Yeah,
we're testing the waters with doing some audio feeds for some of the shows. Certainly not everyone will get one, but we're looking into trying it. And the original Trek's up there as well. So, so by all means, thanks very much for watching. Keep watching TV. We'll see you next time. Have you got any vanilla?